48% of the workforce is burnt out. Ugh. That's almost half of the workforce is burnt out, Valerie.
That's a scary
insane.
number.
It's a scary number. And I don't see that getting better anytime soon, because now you've got burnt out employees who have been laid off as well. You shouldn't care. Nobody should care where your employee is working from.
Once you were burnt out, how did you find your purpose again?
Firstly, understanding that you need to reset. Model selflessness in a very selfish, ruthless world where everybody's out to just make themselves look good. Stop and think about, how can you make somebody else look good? Can you see who's struggling in the room and might need a hello? If you're burnt out and you're trying to convert it into something that's positive, you have to replenish yourself. You have to replenish those energy reserves.
So what made you convert that burnout feeling to something so positive?
Nobody should have to quit their job to recalibrate.
Hello, guest. Welcome back to Pivot Mode. We took a small hiatus just to keep you on the edge of your seat because I saved the best for last. I have an array of guests coming, and today we are blessed to have one of my tops. But before I introduce you to this very special guest, I wanted to start my podcast, as you all know, with a quote that will align with the topic of discussion for today. It stems from a topic that we, for sure, can relate to on a daily basis, but for some reason are afraid to tackle as a conversation, as a safe space, as a place of common, insecurities and concern when it comes to the workforce. And that topic is burnout. Almost everything you unplug will turn out to work eventually if you plug it back in. And that includes you. Burnout, by definition, is an emotional, physical, mental stressor that is usually demonstrated by the augmentation of stress. It's a conversation that needs to happen. It's a conversation that we as a nation, as a people, have a tendency to kind of keep in the back seat, only because we fear of being judged. We fear of, the inability for leaders to understand and to relate and to be compassionate and empathetic. Today, we're going to bring that to the forefront. We're having that conversation. So buckle up, because with me, I have the one-woman show, the one woman who took that word, that scary word, and transformed it into self-leadership. With her experience with burnout, she was able to tackle this very, very important topic and implement a framework and create a framework that will allow us to better understand and better discuss, better introduce the idea to others of how important the discussion on burnout is. So just to give you a little background about this guest. 18 years in the industries stemming from Shell to Citibank to Oracle to Plateau to so many others in the UAE, born and raised in Hong Kong, worked her way through and eventually launched and created this formidable approach to self-leadership. And we are lucky enough to have her today. Without further ado, I am pleased to introduce Noor. Please introduce yourself to our guest today.
Oh, Valerie, thank you so much. You are way too kind and you give me way more credit than I deserve.
Absolutely not.
You
Absolutely
are,
not. I wish
you
I
are,
had another half hour.
no, you're so incredibly gracious. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So I guess to understand more about myself, it might be useful for you guys to understand my mission because the two go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
And it's based on my lived experience. So self-ternity is a workplace leave type that I want to normalize within the workplace. I want to bring about systemic change by making this a normalized leave type. Because one of the things that I understood is when it comes to things like burnout, a traditional 2-week vacation is not enough. It is not enough to address systemic burnout. And you need something else. You need to be able to step away, to focus on your headspace, to really be able to recalibrate your life. And when you are able to recalibrate your life, focus on the things that aren't working, then you can move forward and find self-leadership and move towards that future version of yourself. And that's the entire point of self-ternity. And again, it was born from my lived experience because I experienced that after being in the corporate world for 18 years.
Oh, and to me, that is what triggered my interest in bringing you on. It's not that you pulled this out of thin air. You experienced it.
Mhm.
You understand the physiological feeling that comes with burnout, because we speak about it, that it's an actual physiological feeling.
Yeah.
And for you to be able to transform that into creating a framework where now you can share that with others was fascinating to me. So what made you convert that burnout feeling to something so positive?
It first starts with realizing that nobody should have to quit their job to recalibrate, right? So when you talk about that feeling and the conversion of it, feeling number one was nobody should have to quit their job to recalibrate. And number two, you can go into therapy, and believe me, therapy is like a very important cornerstone to all of this. But when you do things in isolation, it's basically like lipstick on a pig, right? Because I was doing meditation, I was going to the gym, I was eating healthy, but I wasn't addressing the real core reason for my burnout. And so when I took my self-ternity leave, I was able to convert this very negative feeling into something positive by really taking a step back. And I did that by nourishing myself because I was like, okay, I need to detox corporate life out from my body. And I need to replenish this energy because I was like, it's like when you've got a car with an empty gas tank and you're trying to run it, like you're running on fumes. And so if you're burnt out and you're trying to convert it into something that's positive, you have to replenish yourself. You have to replenish those energy reserves. I don't know if I was able to answer your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the fact that you compared it to burning fumes, because that's what it is. We have, and we see it all the time, that people are walking into their companies completely burnt out and walking into those buildings as a different persona, different person, just to do their job and walk out. So with that, there's missing the purposeful work. There's no more purpose because everybody's so burnt out. So how would you be able to explain regaining your purpose once you were burnt out? How did you find your purpose again?
Or finding your purpose or regaining it comes from a place of balance. And I don't mean to get too scientific here, but when you're burnt out, and we kind of alluded to this earlier when we were chatting downstairs, when you're burnt out, you're constantly in fight or flight mode. When you're in fight or flight mode, your cortisol is like up, which is the stress hormone, right? Your adrenaline is up. So how are you expected to make any kind of a rational decision when you're so stressed out? It's impossible. So ultimately, when you talk about finding your purpose, you have to take a moment to strip things back, and you have to find space to be able to do that. And like I said, I don't think you can do that in just a 2-week vacation, but finding your purpose, at least for me, and what I believe will be true for others as well, is firstly understanding that you need to reset, right? That you need to take this break. It's replenishing yourself. So kind of making sure that you're nourishing yourself, not just physically and emotionally, but cognitively as well, your social circle, looking at your environment, feeding your soul. Then it's also about recognizing what are the things that aren't serving me anymore, like detoxing. Honestly, like sometimes people and relationships from your life that are bringing you down and diminishing you. Once you're there, you have finally built a baseline, right? Based on self-reflection to understand, A, what's not serving you anymore and what is serving you. And when you've got that, then you are in a position to rebuild your life. You are in a position to anchor yourself to a future version of you and say, that is what I'm building towards. And when you've done that, your purpose becomes so incredibly clear because you start operating as a future version of yourself, as opposed to being stuck in either the past or the present.
Oh, I think that's brilliant. And that I clearly see how that can lead to self-leadership.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate a little bit more on that component of finally honing in on self-leadership? Because that, the word leadership is just so broad in a sense that people see it as, you're in a corporate environment. It's the suits. It's the suits. That's not my role. I'm an employee. There is no real need for me to have self-leadership skills because I'm led, I'm managed. So elaborate on your approach and your framework when it comes to self-leadership and how important it is.
Yeah. So again, when you take a look at that word self-leadership, you are leading yourself forward, right? It's about having agency. So again, taking it back to my background, I was an individual contributor most of my life. I had a manager telling me what I should and shouldn't do. I had a manager managing me, leading me. I quit my job at the age of 43, and suddenly I was faced with this situation that I was in where I had to lead myself. I didn't have a manager anymore to lead me. But when I started going through that journey, one of the things that I recognized and the things that I learned through self-reflection, I was like, God, if I had the clarity that I have now, back when I was working, oh my God. Like, honestly, I probably would have been more productive. I would have been able to deal with people better. I would have been able to own the trajectory of my career. And so what's in it for people, for employees right now that are in the workplace, the reason why they should focus on self-leadership is because they will be more aware of the future that they are crafting for themselves. They will be crafting a future based on intention, based on curiosity, and based on the life that they want to create for themselves.
And I couldn't agree more, because that is where this generation is, their hunger is coming from. If it's not purposeful, if there's no intention, if there's no connection, they deplug, they unplug, they completely, we lose them. So here you have leaders complaining, not realizing that, no, it's a different generation. We need to approach this differently. They need that self-leadership. They need that agency. They need that support. So that's where the gap exists. The generations before are stuck in the archaic way of leading, and the younger generation is having a hard time. So that big gap is where we find the passion that we share. So how would you advise the leaders of today on, and we have this conversation downstairs as well, for, the generations from 13 to 28 that we are tackling, how would you orchestrate explaining to the leaders a better approach?
Let me just say this. I think the question that you asked is so incredibly important because the work starts in the workplace with these individual contributors today. To bring about systemic change in the workplace, I think is difficult, and it's going to take several years to happen because you've got leaders who are, I'm going to age myself. I'm a Gen Xer, right?
Mm-hmm. So am I. We're proud.
proud Gen Xer. And so a lot of the people that you have in leadership today are Gen X and slightly older, perhaps, right? Who subscribe to a much older way, an archaic way of thinking, because their formula or what they consider to be the right way of leading and managing is based on what they saw from their managers. And they think they're doing a better job now compared to them. I'm sure they had a heavy hand with whatever managers they had at the time. But I think unless you have leadership that is keyed in on the human side of leading, number one. Number two, understanding that they need to articulate the value of what they are doing to Gen Z and millennials to show what purpose or impact they're creating for their customers. That is what's going to help Gen Z feel more connected. But to have wellness policies in the workplace, I think is great. But Gen Z today, they would much rather have a healthier workplace to live in than free lunch on Friday. Because free lunch on Friday is not going to motivate them to come into work. 25% of Gen Z employees today are happy at work. So the math is 75% are unhappy, they're dissatisfied, they have no purpose or feeling of impact of their work. And to think that these are the same guys that are going to be managers by 2030. I think they say 70 to 75% of the workforce will be millennials and Gen Z. And so the numbers are staggering, right? If they don't take care of this problem today, Gen Z and millennials, they're either going to quit because they're burnt out. They're going to quit because they feel no purpose to what they're doing. So what's going to happen to the bottom line for these companies? It's scary.
It's scary. I lose sleep over this, to be honest, because I'm the mom of two Gen Zers. So I see and fear for them because we see so clearly as to what direction this is going in. So it's either they, and I'm blessed enough that I have two very, very ambitious young women that I've raised. One just launched her cybersecurity company.
Awesome.
Thank you. My eldest, Annalisa, launched her cybersecurity company, and my youngest, Samara, is ready to revolutionize urban development.
I love it.
Yeah. So they're very, very ambitious, but I can see that it stemmed from one, them wanting to have agency over their future, but also because they lost faith. They lost faith in the generations before them, and the sense of ownership and fellowship and togetherness and eagerness to make changes just didn't exist enough for them to want to join companies to do it. And that lack of trust broke my heart. So in that spirit, how can you help explain the importance of the trust that is lacking in the workforce?
Yeah.
And how that's affecting the bridging the gap between the two generations.
Yeah. The best way for me to put it is for individuals to model the kind of behavior they want to see in the workplace. This is very difficult to do, by the way, right? I think it's important to model the way you want other people to treat you. If a person can successfully do that, and that boils down to things like culture as well, right? Be the culture you want to see in the workplace, right? You say people aren't kind, show people what kindness and generosity looks like in the workplace. So individuals, and that boils down to self-leadership and agency as well. Because if somebody's in the workplace and saying, these are all of the things that are wrong, okay, well, what can you do to help bring about that change in a small way, right? Because I feel like we have to see it as something that's infectious. It's a contagion. And I've seen that, right? I used to work for Tableau, which is a data analytics company, which was later acquired by Salesforce. And we were a team of about 10 people. And we were all from different nationalities, but we were all kind of selling into the Australia, New Zealand market. We would have these 6:45 a.m. starts because we were based in Singapore. So we would start work at 7 a.m. And it was probably one of the best environments that I've been in. Wow. Everybody was super friendly. One person, I think, started the trend of like bringing in coffee in the morning. And so eventually, again, it was generous, right? Like my friend Rachel didn't have to do that, but she brought coffee for people because she was like, no, it's nice, right? Everybody needs a cup of joe at like 7 in the morning. And so you end up modeling things that make you feel good, right? And when it makes you feel good, you want to try and do that for other people as well. So it's about modeling selflessness as well.
Oh, I like that.
Right? Model selflessness in a very selfish, ruthless world where everybody's out to just make themselves look good. Stop and think about, how can you make somebody else look good? Can you see who's struggling in the room and might need a hello? How are you doing? And I think these are the small ways in which individuals can take agency and bring responsibility into the workplace to try and create something that's different. Because again, while leadership is trying to understand what's happening with Gen Z and millennials, I think Gen Z, millennials, and Xenials or Gen Xers need to step up as well as a collective.
As a collective, I agree. And that's exactly the word that came to mind when you said it, as a collective, right?
Yeah.
If we all, because we're noticing that there's a problem. So if we all act accordingly, the change will happen, right? And then that will bring upon trust, because that's the thing. It's the cynical approach that Gen Z has to the generations before them.
Yeah.
So they don't walk in with 100% trust. So you have to build that trust from foundational perspective, then establish that relationship, then create that environment.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of stepping stones that I don't feel that companies are pouring into enough. Do not get me wrong. I see it. I've witnessed the attempt in change, and it's a breath of fresh air, to be honest, with my company. And I love that they do this. They have mindfulness walls, and you could grab a little inspiration note on your way, from one class to another. As an educator, we're working all day and running around all day, so to be able to stop and grab a little note that inspires you for the day, it does make a difference. It really does. And to see companies that are tweaking their, formalities in order to welcome and build that community is uplifting, right? But a lot more needs to be done. So much more needs to be done. So in your opinion, if you were to start a company today, what are the steps that you would have in place that are non-negotiables to ensure that your company would be that environment for the generations to come?
So the very first thing is self-leadership training. I mean, that is something that needs to be formalized. Why is leadership training only given to managers? Self-leadership training, knowing how to lead yourself before you can lead others, is integral, right? Secondly, it's building an environment and a culture of trust, meaning you have to be results oriented. You shouldn't care. Nobody should care where your employee is working from, what country they're sitting in, whether they're at home or they're in the office. All you want are results. If you've given somebody a quota or a KPI, your goal, the only thing that you should be worried about is that goal being achieved, regardless of where it's happening from. So I think those two are paramount. Training, making sure that the individuals are set up for success by giving them all the resources they need at the end of the day. Number 4, just getting rid of this entire culture of escalation. I think people, do you know what I mean by that culture of escalation? I think people have forgotten how to have conversations with one another to figure out the solution to a problem. And what I see, or what I have seen a lot in the workplace, is a lot of like finger pointing, playing the blame game. Let me see who I can blame for this, because I'm not going to take responsibility for, like an issue that hit the roof.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that would be a non-negotiable for me, because we can't run a company in 2025 as if we're still living in the 1960s. You have to keep up with the times. You have to look at the generations that are now coming into the workforce, the way that they're thinking, right? I mean, sorry, and this is becoming a long-winded answer.
No, please.
You think about, Gen Z, they were born into a digital world. They were born, and they're going into the workplace having not known anything but being connected. Right? So circling back to burnout is inevitable. They are digitally stimulated all the time, right? They're digitally stimulated because they're on their social media apps. Nothing wrong with that, because they're on Netflix and Prime or Disney or whatever other streaming channel they want. Again, nothing wrong with that. But then once they enter the workforce, there's another layer of digital stimulation that's coming in, which is the Slack messages, the Microsoft Team messages, the emails, the phone calls, and it's coming on their laptop and it's coming on their phone, and it's just too much. It ends up being too much.
No, I agree. So what role would self-turnity say that it plays in remedying this situation?
When I talk about self-turnity is more for addressing systemic burnout, right? I think when it comes to this, I've got the 7.3 self-leadership workshop, which is adapted from my self-turnity leave. And I think for organizations, having the 7.3 self-leadership workshop to kind of help address issues of, you could say, a lack of self-leadership, or people being disconnected or disengaged from work, the 7.3 self-leadership workshop will help with that, because then you're addressing the issue of burnout before it becomes a massive issue. Self-turnity, on the other hand, is when you're so far past burnout, right? Where you're so depleted, it's a struggle to even get out of bed. Where you cannot find yourself being able to be productive in the workplace. And that's why self-turnity is about taking time away from the workplace to recalibrate, right? Because when I talk about the 7.3 self-leadership workshop, there's a premise to it, right? And the premise is curiosity and critical thinking that help create change, right? So you're using self-reflection in order to, and this is what I do now that I'm over my burnout, thank God. But when I feel it creeping up, I pause. I'm like, okay, Noor, what exactly feels uncomfortable right now? Because I try to get to the deeper reason of it. okay, if this is feeling uncomfortable, why is it feeling uncomfortable? Have you felt uncomfortable like this before as well? Right? Then I start connecting the dots to create the pattern. And then in order to create any kind of a meaningful change, you need to have the willpower to do it. But when you're so burned out, you don't have the capacity to self-reflect and ask yourself questions, spur of the moment. I remember the height of my burnout, like getting out of bed was difficult. Like I felt like making a cup of coffee was just way too much work. I remember I'd be in the shower like stressing about like getting a phone call from my manager, like proper burnout. And so for them, self-ternity is the best way of moving forward, which is taking that extended break, really understanding the root cause of the burnout, where it's coming from, and then getting on that path of recalibration. And that's why I'm advocating for systemic change in the workplace, because BCG says 48% of the workforce is burnt out.
Ugh.
That's almost half of the workforce is burnt out, Valerie.
That's
That's
a scary
insane.
number.
It's a scary number. And I don't see that getting better anytime soon, because now you've got burnt out employees who have been laid off as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to say the situation is getting better, but it's not, which is why self-ternity, I think, is a great way for people to really take stock, recalibrate, and go, okay, but did I actually really like that job anyway? And am I meant to do something else? So let me just pause and calm down for a minute. And that's why I want workplaces to make self-ternity leave, a part of their leave types, because if they're able to give their employees space to recalibrate, you're basically giving employees an opportunity to come back stronger for themselves, their loved ones, and the workplace.
It's so true.
Because again, I didn't want to quit my job back in 2023. I just felt like I didn't have any other choice. I loved my job. I love doing tech sales. I really did. And I think that's the case for a lot of burnt out people. If they were to strip back all of the pain and the hurt, they love what they do. Maybe. But they won't know until they can actually remove themselves from the situation and look at it with clarity. But you can't do that if you're worried about work, 8, 9, 12 hours a day on weekends, on holidays, when you're taking your laptop with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And like you said, this generation doesn't have the opportunity to disconnect.
Yeah.
Right? And we had that conversation as well, that our generations knew how to leave work at work.
Yeah.
Right? We left work at work. At 5 o'clock, you got in your car, you went home.
Yeah.
But now that they travel with all of that extra baggage on a daily basis, there has to be a better coping mechanism.
It's so interesting you brought up the word coping mechanism, because I believe, and I don't mean this in a good way, I believe the world or people are riddled with coping mechanisms. I had my fair share of coping mechanisms. And they can hide themselves as something that feels like it's good in the moment, but it's actually derailing everything that's happening in your life. And the reason why I say that is, I think for a lot of people, they're leading lives that are misaligned. And this is, again, an integral part of self-ternity. And they're leading lives that are misaligned. So I like to think that we should look at life like a pyramid. And at the base of the pyramid, you have everything that forms your foundation, right? Things that are pillars of strength for you in your life. So for example, for me, it's my parents, it's, my sisters, it's my religion. Now it's self-ternity and everything that I do there. It's exercise, it's eating healthy, it's intermittent fasting. These are all things that form my foundation. And this is for everyone, right? Like everybody's got a different idea, like the blocks for their foundation are different. In the middle of the pyramid, you've got your daily stressors. These are the things that you have to do for example, paying bills, getting stuck in traffic, it's a part of life, right? And at the top of the pyramid, you have your coping mechanisms, right? Which could be, for some people, it could be like binging Netflix. It could be doom scrolling, on Instagram, social media.
Mhm.
For other people, it could be smoking. For others, it could be some other kind of substance abuse.
Mhm.
For others, it could be overeating. Everybody's got different coping mechanisms. In a well-aligned life, your life looks like a pyramid, right?
Mhm.
Where coping mechanisms are few. Again, I'm not vilifying anything. I think it's healthy to have coping mechanisms. But when your pyramid is inverted, that's where the problem ends up happening, right?
Yeah.
Because your coping mechanisms are far greater than your foundation. Because when it comes to your daily stressors, instead of using your foundation, your pillars of strength and support to help you deal with it, like, oh, let me just go grab a cigarette.
Yeah.
And your coping mechanisms start overtaking your ability to lead life. So your life is misaligned.
Mhm.
And I think if people were more intentional about what their coping mechanisms are and how much it's actually ruling their life and how much they're paying attention to their foundations or the pillars of strength in their life, people would be able to recalibrate back and have an aligned life that would, to be honest, help address some of that individual burnout. Because there's systemic burnout that comes from the workplace, but then there's individual burnout.
Yeah. You just, I literally saw a light bulb go off. This is why you did the pyramid and then you inverted it. And I never saw it that way, where the coping mechanisms now is the most prominent part of your life, hence why it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
And then what should be your pillar of strength is that little tip at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
You're going to topple over.
You're going to topple over.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never really pictured it that way.
Yeah.
And that to me is where individuals need to build their strength and know themselves so well that that foundation remains the largest part.
Yeah.
So how can we, now I'm sure that comes from family background, the way, you were brought up, all of that has to stem from very early on in life, would you say?
In general?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's story is completely different, right? I mean, just because my parents are a pillar of strength for me doesn't mean that's going to be the case for everyone, right? I'm sure there are a lot of people where, their grandparents are a pillar of strength, or maybe their neighbors are a pillar of strength. And so people really need to look deep. And that's the thing about self-trinity. Like, you get the most benefit when you look deeper within yourself. And so because everybody has a different story, everybody's journey starts at a different point, the elements that make up your foundation are completely different. And you know what? Maybe some people don't have a lot of things that make up their foundation, in which case it's an invitation to try new things, to see what can be, a block of support in your foundation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with that, you don't get shaken easily because your foundation is so anchored.
Correct.
That's the thing. If you're strong enough in knowing who you are and your foundation, then that anchors you and keeps you grounded.
Correct.
So that everything else in life aligns.
Correct.
Right.
And also, these blocks can move up and down when you think about it. So, for example, back in the day, before I quit the corporate world, my job was a part of my foundation. I loved what I did. But when burnout started to hit, it became a daily stressor for me. So it moved up the pyramid. And then my coping mechanisms went up, because to deal with the daily stressor, instead of focusing on my foundation to give me strength to deal with this, I was relying on coping mechanisms. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But at the same time, sometimes your coping mechanisms can end up becoming part of your foundation as well. It could be, for example, if going to the cinema and watching a movie is a coping mechanism for somebody, or even, I mean, we're in the UAE, large population smokes, right? Let's say smoking is a coping mechanism for you. You end up chatting to somebody who ends up becoming like a great friend of yours. They might become part of your foundation. So things move up and down in your pyramid depending on the awareness that you have of what's happening.
Oh, I think that's brilliant to put it that way. I really do. I just wanted to, as we wrap up, give you the opportunity to make up, because what I want to do is to have our listeners walk away, because that's one of my main goals for the podcast, to have as many takeaways as possible, as though we went to Noor University today. And, as an assessment, they are prepared to launch into the world and walk out with as much as possible in your course. What would be the elements of that assessment for you?
The elements of the assessment. Sorry, so when you say elements of the assessment, it would be what exactly?
So if you're assessing, right? You build an assessment for your 7.3.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. What would that assessment entail to guarantee that your students got what they needed?
Okay. Foundationally, curiosity and critical thinking. That is the foundation to everything, especially in the AI world that we live in, where the answers are just handed to you. It is very easy to lose your ability to be curious and ask questions and exercise critical thinking. And when we lose the ability to use that with ourselves, we risk losing self-awareness. And when you lose self-awareness, you lose the ability to make meaningful change that will drive you forward. And so whether you take a self-ternity leave or you're a part of the 7.3 self-leadership workshop, self-reflection, curiosity, and critical thinking play integral parts to this. So that is the foundation. But if I were to have one takeaway for anybody who's burnt out today to kind of help get some of that energy back, may I?
Yes, please. Absolutely.
There are... it's something that I call PECSEC, which is PECSEC.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are 6 ways of nourishing yourself. And this basically forms part 2 of the self-ternity journey. This, again, comes from lived experience.
Okay.
So when you talk about nourishing yourself, it's about nourishing yourself physically in terms of how you move, how you eat, E, which is emotionally, which is being more intentional about the emotions that you let into your body. Sometimes it's watching a sad movie so you can cry because it's cathartic. It's being with people you know are going to make you laugh. And sometimes those emotional inputs are things that you can't control. It's like news that you get of a promotion, the birth of somebody, a friend coming to town. Then you've got cognitive input. This includes going to therapy, which is so incredibly important. I went through therapy. It was the best thing I ever did. But it's also what you're reading or what you're consuming, right? On your phone with the algorithm, with social media, and being more intentional about it. Then you've got social. So social input is about the people you're surrounding yourself with. Be surrounded with good vibes and good energy. Then E, which is the second E, is environment. So the way the environment feeds you. For example, for some people, being around water is very calming, or being around nature is very calming. And then finally, it's about nurturing your core, your soul, your id, whatever you want to call it. So for example, when I took my self-ternity leave, I went home to Pakistan, to Karachi, which is where I'm originally from. My youngest sister is a fine arts student. She studied fine arts, and I was like, Habiba, I want to paint. Help me paint. And so we got like 3 big canvases, and we were just painting, and it was abstract art, but it felt good. I felt like I was nourishing myself. And so for anybody who's burnt out today, think about these 6 areas to nourish yourself. See how you can replenish that energy across these 6 different facets before you even think about detoxing anything from your body, because burnout is energy depletion. And what you need to do is get that energy back in a healthy way.
Brilliant. Brilliant. We couldn't close it in a more suitable and such, inspiring way. So I cannot begin to thank you. You inspired me. You enlightened me. Like, I had so many light bulb moments throughout this episode, and I cannot thank you enough.
Oh, thank you.
As you know,
I do.
You know, it's coming. It's coming, and I enjoy putting my guests on the spot like this. But we close out with these, fire questions or fire words, and then you say exactly the one thing that comes to mind.
Sure.
Because I don't want you to think about it too much, because I want your very first emotion to come out.
Sure.
Right? So here we go. Family.
Life.
Oh, I like that. Life. Sisterhood.
Tribe.
Oh, you're hitting everything on the mark. Like, I'm tearing up here. Inner reflection or self-reflection.
Integral.
Good. Pauses.
Misunderstood.
Oh, we're going to have to elaborate on that.
Right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a
Okay.
quick
So
sec.
for a long time, and I think this is probably something that plagues Gen X and kind of older millennials, pause was seen as weakness.
Mm.
A lot of people feel like they cannot show vulnerability because saying that you need to pause is showing vulnerability, which makes you come across as weak in the workplace. And we all feel this need to have this mask on, like we've got it all together. Whereas if people understood the importance of pause, to recalibrate, even if it's just for a couple of days, to disconnect and take that pause to just be like, just me, I just need to be in my own little world and pause so I can come back stronger. So the day we stop associating pause with weakness, I think things will change.
Oh, that's it. There's no way to close it out other than that. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a good episode. I am sure so many generations, not just Gen Z, but many generations are going to benefit from your brilliance. And please do not be a stranger to the podcast. Well, you're stuck with me now. We're friends. So I will find you to come back and share more of your good energy, good vibe, and great knowledge.
Oh, thank you so much, Valerie.
As, again, we always say on the podcast, it is such an honor to bring such great minds, such brilliant minds, to share their knowledge, share their expertise, and more importantly, share their passion for the generation as much as I do, and for making sure that the generations after us benefit from, one, the things that we learned from and wish we had known prior to, and making sure that we pass the baton in the best way possible. I hope you were able to come out of this with as many good nuggets as I have today. Without further ado, I bid you adieu until our next episode. But before we go, I want to do 2 things. I'm going to get this right. I swear I'm going to get this right. If you like what you see on this show, I want you to right? Give it a thumbs up. That's the very first thing you do. You're going to give it a thumbs up. You're going to comment. You're going to follow us, right? On YouTube and Instagram. And that's it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah?
that's correct.
Say it again.
Like, subscribe, and comment.
Like, subscribe, and comment. Yeah, you do that to make sure that the podcast continues to deliver as well as it does. And before closing even more, I would like to ask Noor, where can our viewers catch you if they needed to or to get
Yep.
more info?
Yep. So as far as Self-Trinity is concerned, as I mentioned, it's a movement that I'm starting to bring about systemic change in the workplace. So the best way to be a part of this is to join my Substack. That's where the movement lives. So by joining Substack, they will be a part of that movement to bring about this change, especially if they believe in the fact that Self-Trinity should be a recognized leaf type. And if anybody's listening that has, they would like to have the 7.3 Self-Leadership Workshop come to their organization, they can get in touch with me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I am so happy that I'm going to be a part of this love letter that's going to be in this time capsule where I can help not only Gen Z and millennials, but the generations to come when it comes to self-leadership. And I hope by the time some of the younger Gen Zs are ready for the workplace, Self-Trinity will already be a recognized leaf type so that they don't have to burn out and they can take that extended period of time off so that they can come back stronger for themselves and the people that they love.
Perfect. Thank you for joining me on this
you.
journey.